I am back, and you are flying high over the zone with the Zig Zag Man in Alameda, California, down by the lagoon at the 420 studio, right across the bay from San Francisco, California, which is in the United States of America, my international listening audience. And I am joined today by a hometowner, because Alameda is my adopted hometown, and I'd like to introduce a social activist. That's the best way I can think to describe her. She's pretty special. Tristen Schmidt, welcome to the airways.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to have you here. The social activism that I refer to is the renters issue in Alameda, which has been going on a couple of years now, and I've been fortunate enough to have interviewed some of the key figures over the last year and a half. Angela Hackenbach is one. Jason Buckley is another one. Linda Forges-Weinstock is another one, about what the situation is in Alameda. It's one of the few counties, cities in the North Bay area that doesn't have rent control. And we've been, as a group of folks, been striving for that, and this is where Tristen comes in, because there have been some real changes lately, and she's heavily involved. Give us an update about what's going on, if you would, Tristen.
Well, my personal involvement with this issue began last winter. In January 30th of 2015, my son came home to find a notice taped to our door that we had 60 days to leave after 9 years of tenancy, of paying rent on time, of requesting repairs that were never made. It was out of the blue as far as we were concerned, although looking back in retrospect, there were signs. Gallagher and Lindsay managed properties on the corner from us, evicted people. They also evicted our upstairs neighbors, and maybe in kind of a victim-blaming mentality, we assumed that there were reasons, and then later found out that there were no reasons, just like there was no reason for them to evict us. So when I started talking about this to other people in Alameda, it turned out that a couple acquaintances of mine also were served eviction notices at the same time. So I started to see a pattern and noticed that, pretty much there are mass evictions going on. Like the management companies in town, there's three, kind of have a stranglehold on a lot of the smaller properties. And Don Lindsay in particular has a history of trying to get property owners to jack up their rents so that he can profit more himself as well. And
okay, now let's name the other two as well. So it
doesn't. Sure. There's Harbor Bay Realty. So they are realty/property management companies. So they sell houses and they quote unquote manage rental properties, which means they're supposed to fix stuff. They get paid to fix stuff, although whether they do or not seems irrelevant to them. So the other one is OMM, and I don't remember what that stands for.
Okay. And they, one would think that they own the predominant amount of rentals in town, at least.
They don't necessarily own the rentals, they manage them. They have, right. So this false narrative that's being presented by the city council and by the management companies is that the mom and pop landlords, are struggling to keep afloat and should be given special preference. That's not necessarily true. Like the management companies, they're paid a percentage per month to collect rent and make repairs. So in our case, for instance, we were living in a Gallagher and Lindsay managed unit that was owned by a woman who was in Santa Rosa for 9 years. And we had a pipe leaking into our bedroom, and the wall was crumbling, and there was mold. And They sent people who lied to us and said, just caulk it. Just spray bleach on the wall. They refused to fix the pipe. Then the owner of the property sent a friend to put in a new shower, which, again, didn't solve the problem because the pipe was leaking from our closet into our bedroom and as well on the other side. There were 2 units on the first floor. So when we got evicted, it was allegedly the reason we were given, allegedly to fix the plumbing, which they did, but they didn't evict the person on the other side of the wall who was new, who was paying higher rent. So it was pretty obvious that they were doing it just for profit.
Okay, and this has been going on for a long time. And for you, you saw it up close and personal. And you went, wow, and you relocated. And you decided rather than to just, accept my loss, lick my wounds, and it had to be a tremendous upheaval. Did your son have to change schools?
Well, no, he didn't. He had to walk a couple of miles to school after we moved. We actually went to Gallagher and Lindsay's office and requested an extension until the end of the school year, and they flat out said no. So we tried. We were lucky to find another unit in town that takes pets because we have pets, their family, and so he had to walk a couple miles to school every morning, which was good for him, but it made our mornings a little more hectic, a little bit crazier, having to get up that much earlier.
Absolutely. It didn't improve your state of mind at all, and you realized that it was something that was epidemic to the city, and it's going on, and you could look at it 2 ways. You could look at it, it's the landlords, the owners against the renters. I think it's a class thing. And
I absolutely agree.
And I think the courts are set up basically because the judges and the courts basically share country club time with the landlords. And so consciously, subconsciously, there's something going on in this country that is bigger than just the Alameda, which is a microcosm of it all. It's going on in the entire country, which brings us to before we go into Bernie and how a difference can be made, we both agree that the only thing that can really change things, because this class thing is allowed to go on and the Congress people are bought and the big money and all this, Bernie's the only one on both sides that doesn't take money from these people. And
absolutely.
That's the reason that if he got in, we would stand at least a chance of getting equal footing, where if there's an expression that galls me, it's we the working poor. Can you imagine people working 40 hours a week? 40 hours, which means 60 hours. Really, what you give them in terms of preparation, downtime, commute, 60 hours out of your life, and you can't raise your family on one income? This is bullshit. Well, whereas a $15 minimum wage galls people who are making billions of dollars, it's nuts. So, but I want to get in, before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about what I think turned the trick and why there is now, after all this time, going to be some semblance of rent control. Can you bring us up to date? What was decided about a week ago? What did they come down with in terms of a program that doesn't please either side entirely? Give us an update on that.
Yeah, the staff of the city council came up with something that was so full of loopholes, it's utterly useless to anyone. The landlords were unhappy that they would have to pay relocation fees for people they evicted. On the tenant side, it pretty much is down to if a landlord wants to raise rent above 5% or evict someone for no cause, They might have to go to a review board called RRAC, Rent Review Advisory Committee,
Right.
which has historically favored the landlord side and actually has no legal teeth. It has no way to enforce any decisions it makes anyway. So it's a waste of everyone's time to go through that.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, I have no faith in that system.
Well, it's the landlords that are appealing the
Right.
5% rent increase, so that when you say it's a waste of time, they're going to get whatever they want when they go to this. Is that how it's set up historically? And
I believe so, yes.
okay.
They can just go and say, I demand a 20% rent increase. The tenant says no. They go before the committee, and the committee says, well, sorry.
Well, how is that rent control?
It's not. It's not rent control.
So
it's not rent stabilization.
It's not going to be pleasing the tenants. And as you say, the landlords are upset because they may have to pay some relocation fee if they throw.
Oh, they're very angry about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they, you would think that they'd, as humanitarians, as human beings, that they would say, we're going to make a lot more in rent when we move our brother-in-law in, or we don't, we pretend to move our brother-in-law in, and he suddenly turns up ill, and now we have a new tenant that pays a third more in rent. The least we could do is give these people some moving expenses, but they begrudge that. So let me make a blanket statement. It doesn't have to be a big landlord. It could be anybody. The term landlord draws itself to people who really enjoy the control of being the lord of the land. And it's been my experience in 69 years that I have met very precious few landlords that aren't totally fucktards and that would screw over the renters and the working people and human beings. People who want to live off the sweat of others. They've got property, and that property means that they can get their work paid for. Their wages are paid for because they've got property. It becomes a mindset, and you're dealing with other people who get paid for nothing. Judges, for instance, they get paid to listen to you, make a decision, and they're in the same country club, and they get this feeling that they're better than the people in the courtroom. And,
right.
That's where you're at. That's where the Renters Coalition is up against it. So it's been, and you've been the one to hold me back on this idea on the Renters Coalition thing on Facebook. A group of folks like yourself, like Jason Buckley, like John Klein, like Angela Huckabach, who have banded together to try to make a difference. I don't think they can. I don't think you guys can. I think it's going to come down to a rent strike. And you guys have the ability. You're coming up with things of all the people. You came up with something the other day. I think John Klein was instrumental in this. A list of all the mom and pop renters. Everybody's going, oh, they're mom and pops. They should be given a restriction. No, they don't want these restrictions. They don't want rent control for their own little greedy purposes, which are not like the band of Gallagher and Lindsay where they all group together, but even individually they still have their landlord kind of ways. So now that we know this as a group, it's going to be a rent strike, or really nothing's going to get settled. Do you agree with that? Eventually it's going to come to that?
I think a run strike would be fantastic, but I don't think we have the kind of solidarity in this town to pull it off at this point. There have been people in ARC that have been working very hard for the last year and a half or more on getting a ballot proposition written, and it'll be filed soon. People can vote on in November, that the city council won't be able to change because it'll be voted on. If passed, then there will be rent stabilization and eviction only for cause in place. So, the difference is that
this longer it turns out, I mean, you get people with a 60-day notice, they don't want to hear about next November's.
Absolutely, I agree. It's half measures.
Yeah.
You know, it's the least worst scenario. It's all compromised, and I think that this problem was created by landlords, by landlord greed, and the income divide in this country is getting bigger and bigger. There are more people working multiple minimum wage jobs, and the CEOs of companies are demanding more and more of the share for no particular skill. So, yeah, I mean, Alameda is a microcosm in that way. The difference between us and, towns across the bridge, though, are people here are too afraid to go out of their comfort level to fight for, their needs at this point. So far, not enough people have been negatively affected yet that we have the kind of solidarity we need the numbers we need to make that kind of change as far as the rent strike.
How many people have to be negatively affected? And I disagree. There's a lot of people. The turnout at these city council meetings have been incredible. There's a lot of folks hurting. And who do you think in Alameda politics right now are on the side of the renters, and who do you think are either covertly or overtly opposed to the renters? Just name some.
Tony Daysog is absolutely openly opposed to any kind of compassionate solution to keep families in their homes.
Okay, how does he manifest that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I have a Bernie Sanders table near his residence on Saturday mornings, and he has approached me to explain various scenarios, that exist in his mind about how, landlords need a fair return on their investment. And he's said that over and over in meetings, too. He doesn't really pay any attention to citizen public comment, period. So, his main concern is, he's for, moving costs, and he doesn't see any reason to keep people in their homes. And, that's just who he is.
No, we're not talking about keeping deadbeats in the home, in their homes. We're talking about people who are paying the rent and going along. And not making a disturbance and not burning down the place.
Right, absolutely.
And all this stuff. We are the people. The people shouldn't have to apologize for being renters.
Right.
We rent and we try to keep the place clean.
And I think there's a big influence too is that Don Lindsay and his ilk have been working with California Apartment Association, whose sole purpose is to trick renters into, or to take more money from renters, I should say. And they, in Richmond, California, they passed, their city council passed rent control, and California Apartment Association paid people $12 to $20 per hour to go out and knock on doors and lie to people saying that they wanted a petition signed to strengthen rent control, when the petition actually said that it was overturning it, and they succeeded because they have the kind of money to do that. So basically, here's a scenario. I lived in a Gallagher Lindsay managed property for 9 years, paid my rent, $1,000 a month, whatever, $14.50 a month. It went up every year for 9 years. Money goes to Don Lindsay. Don Lindsay pays California Apartment Association to come out here and take away my rights, right? I mean, you can tell when these new landlords that are coming into town, people from other countries, they're recent arrivals, and they're buying up large swaths of property, they're being coached. They have these strange ideas that they've been coached on, that renters get free legal representation, we don't work, we're lazy, we're living off them, we're sponging off them. They have been very hostile. In fact, in the most recent city council meeting, they're extremely hostile towards renters.
Right. Who are the people on the council that are for the renters? Just so we get it out there.
Well, not really anyone, as far as I'm concerned.
People have to remember this. The only way to make changes is at the booth and to get out the vote. So we'll talk about that with Bernie. So
in my opinion, none of them are pro-tenant in any way. I think that a couple of them are better, in my opinion, which is only my opinion. It's not fact.
Yeah.
No, I don't think any of them are.
For is to give an opinion.
Right.
Okay. Any less than, I mean, I want to, there has to be somebody that in some way is sympathetic to at least compromise, to at least anybody you can name, or is just a blanket?
Well, it's my understanding that some of the local unions are going to get involved now with the collecting signatures for the ballot initiative, and they have more financial resources than the handful of people who've been working on this issue in town. So I think things are going to change.
Right.
Exactly how remains to be seen.
Okay, well, it may have to come down to just increasing the number of people that we have on our side and
right.
Make it a grassroots effort, much like
Absolutely.
the campaign that Spencer, our mayor, ran, which
I didn't see that as a grassroots effort at all. She paid for her own campaign. She and her husband are lawyers. I think that the people who voted for her were uninformed about her history on the school board when she wanted to shut down half the grade schools. And she was the only one who insisted on that in the grade school and never gave an adequate explanation why. I mean, personality versus principles. People are extremely disappointed. They thought she was going to come in and save the day. I have no idea where they got that idea. Certainly wasn't based on any kind of reality or research on their part.
Well, did she think she had certain people on her side that kind of let her down? I'm not going to...
I don't know what she thinks. I just,
on the council,
I have no idea.
Ran with her? Okay. You don't think her effort was grassroots? You do think Bernie Sanders' chances are based on a national grassroots effort on some sort?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody who is out there, working on his campaign, like 99% of us are unpaid or volunteers because we believe in his stance on issues. And his stance on issues are humanitarian and they cross party lines. So, for instance, I'm a socialist. I'm not a Democrat. He's running as a Democrat, but I back him because his position on almost every issue is the same as mine, and that's really important. So, it's not him as an individual, although, he has 30 years of voting the way he speaks, which is unusual in a politician. But it's not just him, it's a movement, too. People are fed up with the status quo.
They are, but unfortunately, Trump represents, on the other polar, he represents the same dissatisfaction for the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary as fuck because
it is.
He is, although I don't think he's any more scary than Cruz or any of the others. Dr. Carson, who I wouldn't let operate on my goldfish,
mm-hmm.
let alone a brain. This guy's a lot of them are Christers, and they're trying to blur the line between church and state. I don't think either Hillary or Bernie would have any trouble defeating anybody, including Trump, that they put up there. Scary part is, to me, is that you elect Hillary or you have her be the president. It represents absolutely no difference than what's going on now with Obama, and it isn't even all Obama who sold us out to Monsanto.
Absolutely.
Which kills me about Obama. He still drones. They still wiretap. All the same stuff. He is a Republican.
Yes.
He and Hillary are both Republicans.
I absolutely agree.
There hasn't been a Democrat in office in a long time. So Bernie, if not a socialist, he's a Democrat with certain strong socialist ideas. And I think he ends up having to explain that away as if it's a bad thing, which calls me about this country to no end. Like, I'm not a socialist. But you know what?
Well, the media has the media has had an ongoing campaign since, like, the 1930s to try to make socialism a dirty word, and they succeeded.
And
people have no idea what it means.
Absolutely not. Until they want to go to the library, socialism. They want to get Republicans elected, so they want to get, everything. Police, socialism. Police, that's another issue.
And the military.
We'll save that for when I have John. Right, we'll save that for when I have John Klein on. We can talk about that. But I do want to talk about, I want you to give, because you're such an ardent Bernie supporter like I am, I'm going to set you up with an easy question for you, and it is the answer. The most asked question about how can Bernie do this? Where's the money going to come from? It's impossible. These are pipe dreams. These are Hillary's a pragmatist. This, that, and the other thing. He's just smoking this, that, and the other thing. God, I hope he is, for crying out loud. We need a president who gets high, not drunk, not drinks. We got a beer drinker now. That's a little better, at least. But we need a guy who just gets a little buzz now and again, gets in touch with his own humanity, has a thought that's introverted. That we think, look within yourself. Maybe I can change things. I think Bernie's that guy. It wouldn't surprise me if he got a little buzz every now and again. It'd be good for all of us. Notwithstanding, what's the answer to that? Where's all these bucks going to come from? You give it to me.
Well, nobody ever asks how we have all this money for a never-ending war, right? I mean, we have boots on the ground in almost every country in the world. 65% of our budget goes to the military, either directly or indirectly, I think. He wants to tax. He wants to do a Robin Hood tax type scenario where he taxes stock trades. So that would be, there's all this speculative stuff going on. We had to bail out the banks, right? They're screwing around. They're taking their money and they're screwing around with it and they're losing it. I mean,
offshore stuff.
He also wants to tax the ultra wealthy, the hundredth of a percent at the same rate that, the working class entry-level job people are taxed at a higher percent. They're not really getting taxed now. He wants to break up the big banks. He's against this offshore tax credit where people put all their money in another country and don't have to pay taxes. Corporate welfare, he's against. So, I'm convinced that he would spend way, way less on the military budget. There's a tremendous amount of waste there, millions of dollars that have gone missing, with no consequence. This country is not impoverished. There is plenty to go around. We could feed every child in America with the military budget and have a lot left over for free education and free health care and everything else. We're spending a ridiculous amount of money on droning children in other countries. It's inexcusable.
Right. You know what hasn't been mentioned by any of the candidates for a long time, and I bring this up every chance I get wherever I orate on the subject, taxing the churches, synagogues, and mosques. Their businesses, let them compete with the astrologers, and we'll see who wins once that they have to pay taxes like everybody else. And speaking of landlords in Alameda, the Catholic Church owns a chunk of property in Alameda. They are landlords. And let me I'll tell you a little story about property that they own in Alameda in down Encinal in what they call the Gold Coast or whatever it is. They own a bunch of property down there. And a couple of years ago, there were some grants available. Remember, they pay no property tax. They pay and there's grants available where the city was going to come in. They had some extra money to help landlords fix up the facades of their buildings.
Oh, wow.
So the Catholic Church that pays no property taxes, nothing. I mean, all the big bucks they make on that school, St. Joe's, where they go, right?
Right. I mean, St. Joe's even gets to shut down their street during the middle of the day, which the public schools get to do.
They apply for the grant, and the city gives them a grant. They give to fix up the facade. They needed the city's money to fix up their facades. That's number
After
one.
taking 10% of each of their parishioners' incomes.
Oh, absolutely,
right,
that.
church, yeah.
Right, and they take that so the people that give can, in reality, become enablers for the pedophilia that goes on institutionally with those folks. It is part of it all. It is built into the system.
Yeah.
Beyond that, give 10% of your money, plus send your kid to sit on a cleric's lap with his address. Really.
I know there are a lot of people that are in recovery from Catholicism. It's a very damaging religion.
Well, I don't say get away from Catholicism. I say get away from the Vatican. I say you can have a Catholic church with a small c where everybody's Catholic and they give to one another and they play bingo, but you don't have to do it at an atheist's expense. And don't even have to be an atheist. You don't have to do it at the expense of your own parishioners. Let alone the moral thing with the passing on the craziness. Beyond that, what do you think Bernie's odds are right now? Do you think that, have you noticed that people are coming behind him more since?
Oh my gosh, people have always been really positive about him. I started tabling for him last summer, and the typical response is, I'm for him, but I don't think he could win, right? So if everyone who said that voted for him, he could win. I know he's up against tremendous odds, but I remain hopeful. I have to. He's the only one who's going to address climate change, global warming. We have to cut our carbon emissions significantly now, or we're not going to have people left on this planet.
Right, and let's call attention.
He's the only one who's going to do something about that. So it's like, I'm going to remain
optimistic. Let me call
optimistic.
attention to President Clinton's climate record on ecology was absolutely pitiful, and his wife's isn't going to be any different. And speaking of state and separating church and state, Hillary Clinton, if you look into it, she's got a lot of really right-wing Christian foundations that she's backing. There's a lot of bucks there. She's got a big Christian spirit, which is with a capital C, and it makes me want to puke. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm certainly not voting for her. I would not vote for her.
Here's a conundrum that we all Democrats have, and I speak to my buddy brother Scott about this all the time. What happens if, God forbid, at the end, Bernie doesn't end up getting the nomination? A, do you think he'll run as an independent? And B, by not voting for her in the national election, isn't that like a vote for the other side?
Yes, it is. And the way I see it also is neoliberalism is a little bit more dangerous than the crazy far-right out there people. I feel like if we get somebody like Trump or Cruz in office, somebody of that ilk, that the pitchforks and torches are going to come out, right? People are going to react against it. They're going to rebel against it. Whereas if Clinton gets in office, everybody's going to think, oh, yeah, we have a liberal in office, everything's cool, and not pay attention to what's going on, and she's going to do the same thing the Republicans would do. So it's kind of like the wolf in sheep's clothing, or the wolf just not even pretending to be a sheep, right? That's all the only difference I see between them.
Tristan, on that note, we are so messed up as a country. It's kind of scary.
It is.
I don't use the word messed up very often. That's not the word I use. It has become a clusterfuck of bad stuff recently.
Right.
And again, my big thing, a lot of it is the church, a lot of it is the government, and a lot of it is big business. I've tried, as have you, to fight what I call the unholy trinity on these airs for a long time. And they combine to really mess things up, and I'm glad I have the cathartic experience of getting it all out there. A lot of people don't, and you did too on this on this, our first show together. I hope you'll come back.
Sure, anytime.
Beautiful. I enjoyed your company, and just going to end the show the way I end most of them. Tristen, I implore you to keep your humor dry, keep your dreams wet, keep your kids out of military recruiting offices, and we are sponsored this show by Veterans for Peace. If you're out there and you think you have a child or a grandchild that needs to unenlist from any of the branches of the military, get in touch with Veterans for Peace. They will show you how to bring your child home honorably. And keep your kids off the laps of clerics wearing dresses. Keep on keeping on. Thanks, Tristen.
Thank you.
Had a blast. Have a great one.
You too.
Bye.